The setting sun painted the vast plains in fiery hues, casting long shadows across jagged rock formations and narrow canyons. Randall Rant O'Connor, a former gunslinger turned solitary bounty hunter, spurred his horse through the dust. He was tracking a ruthless gang of bank robbers, a pursuit that had led him deep into the desolate expanse known as the Cursed Frontier. Local whispers claimed this land was home to an ancient evil, a place where wild things dared not tread. In the last town he'd passed through, folks spoke in hushed tones of unnatural occurrences in the Cursed Frontier. Wild animals had vanished without a trace, they said, replaced by an eerie, profound silence. Rant, a man who trusted his Colt more than campfire tales, usually scoffed at such superstitions. He made camp at the edge of a deep chasm known as Bone Gulch, a name derived from the grim legends of prospectors who'd met mysterious ends within its depths. The air grew thick and heavy, and an oppressive stillness settled over the land as night fell. Even Rant's seasoned horse, a creature of calm endurance, whickered uneasily, its ears twitching towards the gulch's dark abyss. As the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, plunging the landscape into an inky blackness, a low, guttural moan echoed from within Bone Gulch. It wasn't the sound of wind or rock shifting. It was a deep, mournful sound, like a soul in torment. It was followed by a faint, rhythmic thump-thump-thump, too heavy and deliberate to be any animal Rant knew. Rant grabbed his Winchester, its familiar weight a cold comfort in the sudden chill that permeated the air. He moved cautiously to the edge of the gulch, peering into the gloom. The moan intensified, joined by a chorus of chilling, almost human-like groans that seemed to rise from the very earth below. Then he saw it. From the absolute darkness of Bone Gulch, a faint, flickering pale green light began to pulse, growing brighter with each passing second. It moved slowly, deliberately, rising towards the rim of the gulch. It was immense, far larger than any living creature, its form vaguely humanoid, but grotesquely distorted. It seemed to be lumbering, dragging itself upward, its movements accompanied by the heavy thump-thump-thump that vibrated through the ground. This was no ordinary beast. This was something ancient, something that shouldn't exist. The moan transformed into a deep, guttural roar, echoing through the night, a sound of unimaginable suffering and boundless rage. The ground beneath Rant's feet trembled. The defiled cadaver, a thing of legend, was rising, and it was coming for him. Rant instinctively fired his Winchester, the sharp crack of the rifle a defiant challenge against the rising horror. The bullet slammed into the immense grotesque form emerging from Bone Gulch, but they had no effect. The pale green light pulsed, the roar intensified, and the defiled cadaver continued its slow, inexorable rise. It was a nightmare given form. Its body was a patchwork of rotting flesh, exposed bone, and desiccated organs, unnaturally stitched together, reeking of profound decay. Its skin was mottled and greenish, its limbs too long, too thick, ending in massive clawed hands that scraped against the rock as it pulled itself upward. Where its head should have been, a featureless, skull-like mass of bone was twisted grotesquely, and from within its gaping, toothless maw, the guttural roar emanated, a sound of eternal torment and insatiable hunger. Its eyes, 2 points of sickly yellow light, blazed with malevolent intelligence. As it drew nearer, an overwhelming stench of death and decay assaulted Rant's senses, a smell so profound it made his stomach churn. The air around the creature became unnaturally cold and heavy, pushing back against the desert's heat, making it hard to breathe. He could feel a draining sensation, a profound weariness seeping into his bones. He fired again and again, emptying his rifle, but each bullet merely embedded itself in the monster's putrid flesh, causing no discernible harm. It was impervious to lead. The defiled cadaver reached the gulch's rim, its massive form towering over Rant. The ground beneath its feet, already dry, instantly began to crackle and wither, turning into fine, powdery dust, as if the very life was being sucked from the earth beneath its weight. The creature lowered its grotesque head, its sickly yellow eyes fixing on Rant. The roar quieted to a low, guttural growl, and a single, chilling thought echoed in Rant's mind. Mine! It was not spoken, but communicated directly, a thought of ancient, consuming possession. Rant dropped the useless rifle. This was no ordinary monster. This was something from beyond the veil, a corrupted life, and it was coming for him, not to kill him, but to consume him, to add him to its tormented essence. He had to find something, anything, that could stop a thing of rot and hunger. His gaze swept across the barren landscape, searching for an escape, a weapon, a miracle. Rant scrambled back, desperate to escape the immediate grasp of the defiled cadaver. The overwhelming stench of decay choked him, and the oppressive cold radiating from the creature drained his energy with every labored breath. The monster's low, guttural growl vibrated through the ground, accompanied by the squelching sound of its decaying flesh shifting. He remembered an old tale from the cursed frontier, whispered by a grizzled prospector. Some say the earth itself is sick out here, corrupted by what lies beneath. What grows in the defiled soil, that's where the weakness lies. The prospector had spoken of strange glowing fungi found deep in abandoned mines, said to ward off spirits. Rant had dismissed it as nonsense, but now, faced with this abomination, he was desperate. He ran towards a small, abandoned prospector's shack visible in the distance, a dilapidated structure barely clinging to existence. He hoped for some kind of tool, some clue, anything. The defiled cadaver, its massive form lumbering with surprising speed, pursued him relentlessly. Each step it took caused the ground beneath its feet to wither and crack, turning the earth into dead, chalky powder. He burst into the shack, the rotten door splintering under his weight. Inside, the air was stale and heavy with dust. He saw rusted tools, a broken cot, and a few discarded mining lanterns. But no glowing fungi. He heard the ominous thump-thump-thump of the cadaver outside, followed by a sickening crunch as it tore through the shack's weak walls, its putrid head pushing through the opening. Its sickly yellow eyes fixed on Rant, and the guttural growl filled the tiny space, resonating in his chest. Suddenly, Rant's eyes fell upon a small, crudely drawn map tacked to a crumbling wall. It depicted the local area, with various mines marked. One particular mine, deeper in Bone Gulch, was circled and labeled Black Iron Mine, the Heart of the Sickness. And next to it, a small, hastily drawn symbol that looked like a blooming flower with glowing petals. It was the fungi, the prospector's tale. The heart of the sickness meant the source of the corruption, and perhaps its antidote. He tore the map from the wall, his heart pounding. The defiled cadaver, its form now partially inside the shack, roared in frustration, its massive clawed hand reaching for him. The stench of decay was overwhelming. Rant scrambled out of the shack through a gaping hole on the opposite side, the cadaver's putrid breath hot on his heels. He ran towards Bone Gulch, the map clutched in his hand, a desperate hope against the monstrous evil that stalked him. He had to reach the Black Iron Mine, had to find whatever glowing flower could stop this terror. Rant plunged into the depths of Bone Gulch, the smell of decay and the relentless growl of the defiled cadaver echoing behind him. He followed the crude map, navigating the treacherous terrain, scrambling over loose rocks and descending into deeper ravines. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, as he ventured further into the gulch's heart. The cadaver, too large to move quickly through the confined spaces, lumbered behind him, its heavy thump-thump-thump shaking the very ground. He could hear its frustrated roars echoing off the canyon walls, a sound of ancient, boundless rage. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he saw it. A dark, jagged opening in the rock face, surrounded by thick, black iron ore. This was the Black Iron Mine. Its entrance seemed to exude an aura of oppressive cold, and a faint, sickly green mist hung around its maw. He entered the mine, the darkness immediate and suffocating. He fumbled for his last match, lighting it with a trembling hand. Its flickering light revealed rough-hewn tunnels, shored up by rotting timbers. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and subtly foul. He moved deeper, the silence within the mine broken only by his ragged breathing and the distant thump-thump-thump of the cadaver forcing its way into the mine entrance. The walls around him seemed to press in, the darkness absolute. Then he saw it. A faint, ethereal bluish-green glow pulsating from a deep vein within the mine wall. It wasn't the sickly light of the cadaver, but something else entirely. Organic, vibrant, yet strangely cold. He remembered the symbol on the map. The glowing flower. This was the fungi. He approached the glowing vein. The air around it felt strangely clean compared to the putrid stench outside, but also intensely cold, a chilling, almost sterile cold. He saw clusters of peculiar crystalline fungi growing directly out of the black iron ore, their translucent caps emitting the soft, bluish-green light. They looked like something alien, born of the Earth's deepest, most corrupted places. As he reached the glowing fungi, he heard the cadaver's furious roar echo closer, now almost directly behind him within the narrow tunnel. Its massive, putrid form was squeezing through the constricted passage, its sickly yellow eyes blazing from the darkness. He grabbed a handful of the glowing fungi, pulling them from the rock. They were surprisingly cold to the touch, almost like ice, and left a faint, luminescent residue on his hands. He felt a strange tingling sensation, almost like a jolt of electricity. The defiled cadaver burst into the chamber, its guttural roar shaking the very timbers of the mine. Its putrid stench filled the small space. Its clawed hands reached for Rant, the sickly yellow eyes burning with triumphant hunger. Rant didn't hesitate. He thrust the handful of glowing fungi directly at the cadaver's grotesque, skull-like head. The reaction was instantaneous and cataclysmic. A blinding flash of bluish-white light erupted from where the fungi touched the cadaver, followed by an agonizing shriek that ripped through the very fabric of the mine. It was a sound of pure, absolute annihilation, a sound of life being ripped from the unliving. The cavern erupted in a blinding flash of bluish-white light as Rant thrust the glowing fungi into the defiled cadaver. The creature's agonizing shriek reverberated through the mine, a sound of unimaginable torment that seemed to tear at the very stone. Its immense putrid form convulsed violently, thrashing against the narrow confines of the tunnel. Where the fungi touched its decaying flesh, the cadaver began to decompose at an impossible rate, not merely rotting, but dissolving into a swirling cloud of dark, acrid dust that immediately dissipated in the air. The putrid stench of decay intensified to an unbearable degree, then, within seconds, vanished entirely, replaced by the sharp, clean scent of ozone and the strange, sterile cold of the fungi. The cadaver's sickly yellow eyes, once blazing with malevolent intelligence, flickered wildly, then dimmed to nothing as its grotesque head disintegrated. The guttural roar became a final, desperate gasp, a whimper of pure oblivion, before silence descended. Within moments, the entire defiled cadaver was gone. Not a trace remained, no bones, no flesh, no lingering putrefaction. It had been utterly purged, reduced to nothingness by the strange, life-opposing power of the glowing fungi. The spot where it had stood was now clean, almost sterile, coated in a faint dusting of the bluish-green luminescence. Rant stood panting, his body aching, his ears ringing from the creature's death shriek. He was covered in sweat and grime, but he was alive. The oppressive cold had lifted, replaced by the natural dampness of the mine. The profound dread that had clung to him for hours had vanished, leaving behind a chilling yet undeniable sense of peace. However, the immense energy unleashed by the fungi's reaction, or perhaps the cadaver's annihilation, had severely destabilized the mine. The very air around him began to vibrate, and a low, guttural groan echoed from the deep. Dust and small rocks rained down from the ceiling, and the ancient wooden supports began to creak and splinter ominously, their strength finally giving way under the immense pressure. Rant knew he had to get out. He had defeated the monster, but now the mountain itself was collapsing around him. The tunnel behind him was already starting to cave in, blocking his return path. He looked frantically for another way out. He saw a faint glimmer of daylight ahead, through a collapsed section of the mine. It was a smaller, less direct exit, but it was an exit. He grabbed a heavy, discarded pickaxe, its familiar weight a comfort, and began to scramble over the rapidly shifting debris, the sounds of the collapsing mine roaring behind him, chasing him towards the light. He pushed himself, fueled by the desperate instinct for survival, ignoring the sharp pains in his side and the crushing weight of the earth. Rant burst out of the collapsing mine, tumbling onto the dusty ground beneath the wide, open sky. He lay there for a moment, gasping for breath, lungs burning from the dust and exertion. The roar of the collapsing tunnel behind him subsided into a series of muffled thuds, and then, finally, a profound silence. The mine entrance was gone, sealed forever by a fresh avalanche of rock, burying Gold Canyon's dark secret deep within the earth. He pushed himself up, his body bruised and battered, but alive. The overwhelming stench of decay had vanished, replaced by the clean, crisp air of the desert. The oppressive cold was gone, and the sunlight, though harsh, felt like a warm embrace after the chilling darkness of the mine. He looked back at Bone Gulch, where the defiled cadaver had risen. The air above it seemed lighter, cleaner, the oppressive stillness replaced by a gentle breeze. The cursed frontier, for the first time in centuries, felt truly clean. Rant made his way back to civilization, a solitary figure forever changed by the horrors he had faced. He reported the mine's collapse, saying nothing of the grotesque creature or the glowing fungi. He knew his story would be met with skepticism, perhaps even ridicule. The true tale of the defiled cadaver and its annihilation remained his alone, a secret he would carry, a burden and a strange badge of honor. He didn't return to bounty hunting immediately. Instead, he sought out quiet, isolated places, finding solace in the natural silence of the vast plains. He learned to appreciate the warmth of the sun and the simple act of breathing clean air. The memory of the cadaver, its putrid form and agonizing shriek, occasionally haunted his dreams, but the image of the purging bluish-green light always followed, pushing back the nightmares. Gold Canyon remained abandoned, its grim reputation solidified by the unexplained mine collapse. No one dared to prospect there again, and the legends of its evil faded into vague warnings about bad luck or cursed ground. The supernatural blight that had plagued the cursed frontier for so long was gone, purged by the very earth it had risen from. Rant O'Connor, the gunslinger who had stared into the abyss and survived, eventually returned to his solitary life, forever vigilant. He knew that the West held endless secrets, some of them terrifying, some of them ancient. But he also knew that even in the face of unspeakable evil, there was a power that could push back the darkness, a cleansing force hidden deep within the heart of the world. And sometimes, it took a man like him to find it, and unleash its roar against the silence of death.